Go for it.
Welcome to Veronica Live, and I've got my co-host today. I've got my old wingman is back. I've got Don Arias, and welcome back, Don, to Veronica Live.
Hey, thanks for having me back. It's just like old times.
Yes, and then I've got, he's back too. He's a Florida political pundit. He's so awesome. I had to talk with Jamie Miller. I'm going to make him a regular on Veronica Live because he just knows everything about politics. So welcome back, Jamie.
Oh, thanks, Veronica. That's quite the endorsement. Thank you.
Well, last time it was his birthday. So, today, is there anything special we need to celebrate? Besides...
Not today. Just a beautiful day here in Sarasota, Florida.
There you go. Well, last night Elon broke the internet, and I wanted to start there because it was the interview that the whole world was happy or angry about that it was occurring last night. So it was Elon Musk with President Donald Trump. And oh my gosh, it took me a while to get in, I will say. But apparently, as of this morning, 1 billion people have kind of clicked on it, heard it, followed it. So I wanted your thoughts on this huge interview heard literally around the world. And not to mention the EU was so nasty and didn't want Elon Musk to do the interview. The UK didn't want him to do the interview. And then, of course, the lovely White House didn't want him to do the interview. So I don't know where our free speech has gone these days, Jamie. So take it away.
Well, most importantly, the Washington Post asked of the White House press secretary, how is the White House going to stop this interview?
Oh,
and
gosh.
It should send shudders down the spine of every freedom-loving, forget about America, anybody who loves freedom anywhere in the world, It should send a shudder down their spine that someone from the Washington Post would suggest that, because they disagree with Donald Trump and Elon Musk, that the interview should be banned. Like, think about that. Like, that's strong language to the White House press secretary. So this isn't a couple of people sitting around a couple of beers at a smoky dive bar. These are important people who have the ability to make these decisions. And if Kamala Harris is elected president, we can count on those decisions going the Washington Post way.
And Jamie, it kind of makes you wonder where the origins of this denial of service attack really came from. It just makes people distrustful of government and institutions like the Washington Post that should be supporting the First Amendment, who are here saying, "No, you got to shut this guy up. He's not with the program."
Yeah, I think we oftentimes get distracted by the devil in the details, right? So, for instance, I have said since Kamala has become the nominee that neither her gender nor race have anything to do with her failures. That's all we need to say about her gender and race. It has nothing to do. I know plenty of successful African Americans. I know plenty of successful women and plenty of successful African American women. That her gender and race have nothing to do with her failures, and we get caught up in, what does her DNA test look like, and we end up debating that, which is irrelevant. And so we need to focus. We need to focus on the failures of the Harris-Biden administration and how those failures are going to continue and be expanded under a Harris regime.
But back to your original point, I just spent 9 days running around Europe, and I was trying to listen to CNN, because I do listen to them too, because I want to know what the Communist News Network is doing, and I wasn't able to get it through the UK. I had to go on my Sirius app to listen to CNN, and then I tried to listen to another show that I listened to because someone running for Congress here was debating. I couldn't get that through my normal app, and I had to backdoor in. So I do feel like they are suppressing stuff over there, but how ballsy of the UK and the EU to boss Elon Musk around. I mean, I'm disgusted. It does worry me, Jamie.
Yeah, and it should worry all of us. We've now the UK is saying that or leaders in the UK are saying, oh, if Americans tweet things that are quote unacceptable, that they'll ask them to leave the country. So this is becoming a worldwide phenom. Americans should be leading the way when it comes to freedom of speech, freedom of elections, and freedom, of freedom in general. And we know that that not only are our country facing these crises, but so is the rest of the world. Like, this is not something that's unique to America.
Well,
and now that they've, I'm sorry, Veronica, but now that they've had this, right, this interview, what do you, and you go out and you Google Trump Elon interview, what do you make of the results you get from that kind of Google search now? I mean, it's withering criticism from what I see. So they couldn't shut the guy up. So the next best thing is to criticize him. What do you make of all this?
We've known for some time that big tech has slanted liberal and has done things like, slowed down the number of people who can see your posts, on Facebook and Instagram and some of these other platforms. I mean, that's one reason why I moved my blog over to Substack, is that, it seems to be one place that currently is someplace where there's not a whole lot of censorship.
Well, and that's part of it too. Elon Musk actually published like all the negative headlines, and this one, Donald Trump's lisp during Elon Musk interview raises questions. So I kept seeing lisp, say that fast 5 times, and then that he was slurring, and I was like, what are they talking about? So it was more the BS factor was alive and well, and I thought the interview was really nice. If you listened to it once you got in and it started, it was a conversation, and that's what Elon Musk said. And one of the huge takeaways from the interview was that Elon said, I was a moderate Democrat who voted for Obama, but I've got to vote for Trump and endorse Trump, because if not, our nation's gone. So I think that's what they didn't want us hearing, Jamie.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. Like, it's not they're constantly, dialing up things that fit their narrative and dialing things down that don't. And, for instance, like, I put my Substack link over on Facebook, and it was immediately taken down because it somehow violated the community standards, and all it was what I would normally put as a blog, and it just they took it. I mean, took it immediately down, and
that's disgusting.
Like, okay, well, that's one reason why Facebook's dying, and these other platforms are growing. Certainly for political content. I don't know of really anybody who is using Facebook for political content anymore. No. I put it there just because it's kind of out of habit, and I have 40 or 50 people who, I like to banter with, who are mostly high school friends, but or friends from high school.
Thanks for clearing that up. That was borderline creepy for a second there, but
yeah, I'm not holding a lot of poker tournaments in the garage for high schoolers. So, but friends I had while I was in high school, I certainly am happy to have a poker tournament.
Okay, I'll bring the cigars. We'll smoke some cigars and play some poker. Oh, that's so funny. Well,
that's crazy. Did you see any irony in this when they're running headlines of like Trump's lisp and his speech from the very same people who totally ignored an Alzheimer's patient in the White House for the last 3.5 years?
Yeah, but it's all predictable, right? Like, so in October of last year, I predicted that the Democrats would do exactly what they did when they did it. They would wait till the end of the Republican National Convention and throw Biden overboard to try to stop the momentum from the Republican National Convention, and that they would point at Trump. They would get someone younger, whether it's Kamala Harris or Chuck Schumer in October. I thought Chuck Schumer was a dark horse, so I was like, I'll throw that out there just for fun.
Oh my gosh, that one makes me puke. I can't handle him at all.
Well, if it went to the convention, I do believe Chuck Schumer would have had the upper hand because I think he and Nancy Pelosi could have whipped delegate votes like they did in Congress and the U.S. Senate for so many years. But it didn't get to the convention. So the saboteur was successful immediately. And, but it was all predictable. And you knew that once they went with somebody younger, they were going to point at Trump and say, oh, look at the old man who's can't string a sentence together. And, and Trump certainly can, there's no comparing Trump to Biden and their cognitive abilities. But there's no question that all polling leading into, let's say, the end of June was that if people had their rathers, they would have replaced both people at the top of the ticket, right? So now Democrats have replaced one, and Republicans have Trump. And for the most part, people, the majority of people would rather see the baton passed to a younger generation. And right now, take the names out of it. One party has somebody from a younger generation and one does not. And so, that's one thing I think you're seeing behind Kamala Harris's momentum.
Well, I am in trouble and I'm in X jail again. I was a violator because they were talking about how she's not going to debate, Kamala's not going to debate Trump, and I just wrote, she will get COVID, ! Just wait. And I got sent to jail for a week, and I don't think I'm out till Friday. So X is not fully free. I want to say, I have learned to rewrite words, COVID, C with a 0 VID, but I didn't this time because everybody else was writing about it. But I do feel like this woman has been coronated because the new cover of Time has her moment on it. And I just cannot believe. And now there's even a border commercial, Jamie. I'm sure you've seen how she is saving the border for, the BS factor with this woman is horrific. And I do want to talk about the VP, but tell me your thoughts on how they're trying to make her now like this. She's the best thing since sliced bread, and she's got the border under control.
Well, she's doing exactly what she should do to win the election, which is move to the center and lie. And so that's exactly what she's doing. She's lying about her record. She's lying about what she'll do. But all you need is enough people to believe the lie to then cast their vote for her. So, Trump has to make a decision about whether or not he's going to make the rest of the race about him or her. And, we all know that Trump has a hard time making the race about someone other than himself. And so while we love that about him, other people hate it about him. And so the rest of the race, in my opinion, is not necessarily going to be about Donald Trump. It's going to be about Kamala Harris. And for him to win, he's going to have to go out and do what I call an opponent clarification campaign. They're going to have to go out and on a daily basis talk about the things that she has done in the past that conflict with what she says she's going to do in the future. And I'm sure they're doing that in the states that matter. We're in Florida. Florida, as much as USA Today and the New York Times want to try to put Florida in play, Florida's not going to come in play for a couple of reasons. And so we don't see as many TV commercials and, internet ads and all these things that they see in other states. So I'm sure that they are doing their part to clarify her positions. I certainly see the national folks saying those things on Twitter. And so I have to expect that those messages are being delivered directly to voters in swing states.
So were you shocked that now she's known as Copycat Kamala because she decided that we're not going to tax tips, and then now she's changing her fracking position? I mean, who is buying this BS from the border commercial to stealing, Trump came out with this in June. Oh my gosh. And then she gets the culinary endorsement
if the Speaker of the House is smart, if the Speaker of the House is smart, when Congress reconvenes in late August, early September, you pass a bill doing away with the tax on tips immediately, and you pass the House, you send it to the Senate, and let Chuck Schumer sit on it or pass it, then make Democrats put their money where their mouth is.
Okay,
and
I like
that. What's the worst thing that happens? Biden then signs the bill, and we have an argument about whose idea it was first, and everybody knows it was Trump's. So,
okay.
So I would say take the sail out of their wind on an issue that today has broad bipartisan support, and I think the Speaker of the House should do that immediately.
That's brilliant.
And I certainly hope that he does.
Well, who's calling to let him know that, Jamie? Are you letting him know that? Because that's brilliant.
I've sent a tweet. That's my communication method with somebody like the Speaker of the House.
Shakers that can bang down that door.
Yeah, I've sent a text to a couple of congressmen to say that they should do that, and I basically get the interesting back. So we'll see.
Okay,
we'll see.
Jamie, do you think though that even with our Vichy press, do you think she can really successfully run from her record? I mean, this is a person who's talked about getting rid of CBP. Defunding the police. I mean, she's had some pretty radical ideas, and of course, the whole global warming thing, or climate change, or whatever they're calling it now. I mean, she's been a staunch supporter of this. We've got her, on video saying things like that multiple times. Can she really throw all that down the memory hole?
And the reason why I say the election is going to be about Kamala Harris is that, Donald Trump effectively won in 2016 with 48% of the vote. He lost in 2020 with 48% of the vote, roughly, when you break it down state by state. And, he's not doing much to expand the electorate, right? And you do that by either expanding with your VP or registering people to vote. And certainly we've seen this influx of people in Florida that makes Florida a much redder state. But I don't know that there's been this massive nationwide voter registration effort like there was in 2016 when he first ran. And so I would have liked to have seen him pick somebody as VP that expanded the electorate. But the debates are going to matter. Those, the Democrat National Convention could matter depending on how woke the DNC decides to be, and how much stuff they try to throw at the American people to jam down their throat that they don't want to accept. And so if the DNC moderates the way that Kamala Harris has over the last week, and it's been about a week that she's been, this quote moderate, she'll get a bump out of her convention, and then it'll be a slow, air letting out of the balloon, all the way to Election Day. Now, does the air go out quickly after a debate, or does it just kind of, does she come in for a soft landing and hopefully she, in her mind, wins by these close margins in these swing states like Joe Biden? I mean, there were 6 states that were really close, and Joe Biden won 5 of them. And a lot like the opposite of what George W. Bush did in 2000, where there were 6 states awfully close. Al Gore won 5 of them and lost the presidency. So, we've been a pretty divided country in these states for some time. And, I expect that Kamala Harris's numbers will, kind of reverse to the mean. That's not the right word, but it'll end up, the bounce will end up meaning less. But there's fewer and fewer moments that are going to change the race. Obviously, Biden getting out and Kamala in, moment that changed the race. The assassination attempt, a moment that changed the race. When somebody picks their VP candidate, those are potential moments that change the race and the debates. And outside of that, it's kind of external. Is there another terrorist attack? What happens on Wall Street? What happens? Does something happen in the conflict either accelerate or diminish in Israel? Does Ukraine and Russia, does something happen there that gets people, that turns into a major election changing moment? And, those are the things that none of us control, right? And so there's bound to be one in the next 80 something days or 90 days, whatever it is. but there's not, the things that you can control are, hey, what am I going to do with my campaign? I advocate for Donald Trump zigging when everybody else expects him to zag. Stop doing the big rallies that are expensive and cost all this money, and start going directly to diners and have one-on-one conversations with Americans, and go to soccer games and see soccer moms, and because you're going to get the same amount of press, whether you have this huge event with 5,000 people, or you have one-on-one events in diners in New Hampshire. And Donald Trump is much better than people expect when he's doing the one-on-one in New Hampshire. And
maybe more things like engaging the black journalists like he did recently. I mean, these non-choir groups he's got to reach out to at some point.
He needs to do more of that. Electorate somehow. He's not going to win in 2024 the way he won in 2016 and the way he lost in 2020. So he has to do something different. And I think that's kind of the anxiety a lot of people are feeling. Right before you called, one of my clients called, and he's just like, Jamie, talk me off the ledge. Like, what's going on here? And I'm like, yeah, I do my part. I write my blog. I know they read it, so my advice I know gets there, but it's not, it's frustrating when you see.
He said with Elon that he's going to do another rally back up where he was shot. So you really think the rallies aren't good enough? I mean, because there's normally thousands of people in, thousands that can't get in. So I mean, that's definitely switching.
The short answer is they're not. The short answer is they're not enough, and so they're super expensive. They're he should be taking that money and putting it into more direct voter contact efforts. Everybody who's showing up to that rally is somebody who's already voting for Donald Trump.
That is true.
So the question is now who's now watching on television a rally for Donald Trump? A swing voter? No, they're not watching that. They've already seen that dog and pony show, and they're either okay, whatever. They're either kind of happy with it or kind of disgusted by it, whichever way they fall. But the people who Donald Trump needs to have vote for him, who are still sitting on the fence, are people who, they don't like the Donald Trump who leads those rallies. They don't like the rambling Donald Trump. That's the Donald Trump that is offending them, and they're like, hey, listen, we want to see something different out of him. What's your plan for the future, and what are you doing? And I know that Elon Musk was a big step towards that, right? So I have to say that was a step in the right direction in my book. But
you think so? I was going to ask you that. Do you think he hurts or helps? Because
I don't think I don't know that Twitter helps. I don't know that Twitter helps that much, just because, or X helps that much, just because I don't know a single swing voter who's a friend of mine who's on X. There's not one.
But Elon has a lot of youngins that are like, they love everything he does. So I think Elon can help push the younger generation, because they're following him like crazy. So that's how I think X was a good thing, because how many, young 20-somethings are following him. They're so excited about his space launches, his, Teslas, that ugly Cybertruck, so I don't know.
There's no question. There's no question it was not a bad thing. It wasn't a bad thing. It wasn't, Ron DeSantis's campaign didn't implode because he had the blip on X to announce his campaign. There were other reasons, that
I hated that night though, Jamie. And last night when it was happening again, because it took like 45 minutes for them to start, it happened all over again. I was like, oh my gosh, we're going down the DeSantis road again. That was painful, but
but people aren't going to blame. I don't think blame DeSantis for that, and they don't blame Trump for that. They blame whether it's somebody trying to attack X, or whether it was a failure of X's servers, or whatever it was. It's not a failure of the campaign, and I think that X was a positive step of trying to say, hey, I'm going to sit down and talk for 2 hours with a friendly interviewer And, and you can't blame him for that. He's still doing way more campaigning than Kamala Harris. And, I just think that when people expect something and you give them that something, you're going to get the same result. And the results in 2016 and 2020 was roughly 48%. And if he's going to break through that and have a big win, he has to do something different. And that's probably not just being on X. That's because X is just another version of the rally. And
right.
So, it's okay. It's probably a step in the right direction. Like you suggested, it probably met some people who are, either on the fence or were unlikely to listen or think about Trump, who may be thinking about Trump today. But is it enough in the right places? And, so much of a campaign, and I know I've said this on your show before, no business school in the world teaches a business plan where you start at zero, you raise $1 billion, you end at zero, and you're successful. And so, but that is a political campaign, and when, where, and what you spend money on matters. And I think that Donald Trump is squandering dollars by holding these huge events that are so costly.
Okay, well, we're sending him the Veronica Live show today to Donald Trump because I think, Jamie, you are visionary. You knew they were going to kick Biden to the curb. So you're the visionary. Go ahead, Don. Don has a question.
Yeah, one question I wanted to ask you. You talk about Trump putting his efforts in the right places. And besides, the retail politics of going to diners and things like that, what are the right places? Are there any right places for him in cyberspace? Or does it all have to be this ground game?
The short answer is, you're going to put your money into cyberspace in the places where you're going to reinforce your ground game, right? So the campaign needs a full integrated communications effort. And so you're gonna want to hit folks in all of those places. For instance, I'm not a genius at this, but when I have candidates who are going door to door and they're going door to door in precinct 1 with 500 voters or 500 households, I always say send a postcard the week before you go door to door to all 500 households and say I'm going to be there. And then go to door. Maybe you hit 50, maybe you hit 100. You're not going to hit 500. But the week after, you always send a postcard saying, hey, I met some of your neighbors and they really like what I have to say. Make sure you go talk to them about it. And send that to the whole 500 people so that people know you care enough to be in their neighborhood, right? So you went to, maybe you didn't come to my door, but I know you were here and you went to somebody's door.
I like that tactic. I'm stealing that one. That one's good.
Actually, I don't know about you, Veronica, but I've gotten some door hangers like, hey, Don, I stopped by to say hello. You weren't home.
Really? No, not on
candidates.
My street. Now, I haven't gotten a single Donald Trump one yet, but I will say when Nikki Haley was running, I am not kidding, I threw away 12 of those letter ones that I'm like, why would you ever send me a letter? And I've never seen a Republican so aggressive like Nikki Haley was, honestly. So, but I like your technique there.
Well, so I do think that there's. So to answer your question, Don, yes, he needs to be on TV in those places. You look at, and I'm writing a blog now on, the Sun Belt states are kind of Donald Trump's to protect. The Rust Belts are kind of Kamala Harris's to protect. And now I'm doing a series 3 on 5 states. 3 are likely Democrat, 2 are likely Republican, on where Kamala Harris can go on the offense or Donald Trump can go on the offense. And you have to go and you have to weigh all of those things with the financial impact of them all. Like, Kamala Harris wants to go on the offense in Florida, and I would say, bring it on, cowgirl, because you're going to spend $150 million. You're going to spend $150 million to lose the state by 3 points, and she would probably spend $150 million and still lose the state by 3 points. Now, if she wants to do that, and her goal is to make Donald Trump to spend $120 million to win the state by 3 points, that's a valid tactic to be like, hey, I want to try to bleed him out. I'm going to bleed him out in one of his home states. And, I'm going to take the fight to him, but I look at a state like Ohio where, yes, J.D. Vance is on the ticket, but he's a first-time U.S. senator. And I always believe that you should have to be, I would only choose somebody who's been reelected to something to be on my ticket. Forget about J.D. Vance.
Okay,
but
when
anyone,
you're writing your book, this is like the little second nugget that you've shared now. That I'm full of them, Veronica. You know that. But you look at Ohio, and you look at the last time. First of all, there have only been 3 campaigns in 1892 since 1892 where Ohio didn't pick the winner. Grover Cleveland in 1892, FDR in 1944, JFK in 1960. All 3 of those lost Ohio and won the presidency. There is a fourth, Donald Trump in 2020, who won Ohio and lost the presidency. It's only 4 times since 1892 has Ohio not picked the president. And and so, or that was Ohio wrong about who won the presidency. So, and only one time has the person won Ohio and lost the presidency, and that was Trump in 2020. So Ohio is kind of this weird thing. But the last time a Democrat won Ohio was 2012 with Obama. And you would think, oh, it's Obama, it's re-election. But the other underlying current, and I'm going to give your listeners a heads up because it's coming out in my Substack tomorrow, is that the other thing that was happening in Ohio was 2 things. There was a ballot initiative to go to a citizens redistricting commission, which was highly controversial. It lost. But the other important thing, and the most important thing, is that in 2012, there's a Democrat incumbent senator running for re-election. And what is similar in 2024? Believe it or not, there's one amendment on the Ohio ballot, a citizens redistricting commission, and that same U.S. senator who was first elected in 2006 is up for re-election in 2024. And so if I'm Kamala Harris and I look at the map and I say, okay, where can I piggyback on somebody? And by the way, the Democrat in Ohio is, it's not a super competitive race. It could become competitive, but right this second, it's not super competitive. But but where can I spend my money and pick up what people think is going to be a red state? And I look at Ohio, not Florida, and I'm not saying that to give Kamala Harris advice because I know she has smart people crunching these numbers the same way I do. And but the stars line up for Ohio a lot like the stars kind of line up for Trump, not as much because the historical numbers are so bad, but Trump is polling close enough and there's enough external factors in a place like New Hampshire that if Trump can win Pennsylvania and New Hampshire, the election swings to Trump. If Kamala Harris is able to win Nevada, which I think is a toss-up, and you look at Arizona, which is with the abortion amendment coming on the ballot yesterday, that now turns into a possible toss-up. She can win both of those. And if she loses Georgia, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, Trump still wins the election. So the pieces, the puzzle pieces, and the budgets in each one of these states make a critical difference. Okay, I have a question, though.
Sorry, I rambled on there a little bit.
No, you are this numbers guy. You're incredible. Her pick for VP, Governor Walz, whatever his last name is an absolute disaster. Why would you pick somebody so extreme with his, if you're a trans child, you can be taken out of the parents' homes if they don't want to support you. You can have surgery under 18. Not to mention, Don and I are both retired Air Force officers. His military record, how he was saying he was one rank and he really wasn't. And then this week, he misspoke. He was in Afghanistan. He held a weapon. I mean, I am literally appalled by this guy. Plus, he's given illegals driver's license. They can have health care. And then you go down the road with abortion, allowing babies that are born alive to just sit on a tray and die. I am like this has pushed me to the edge, Jamie. He's such a radical.
Well, I agree 100% with all of that. And if the question is why did she pick him, and I think there's an underlying current within the Democratic Party of Palestinians versus Jewish people.
Yeah,
really,
Shapiro seemed much better to me.
And so, and when you look at, there's not a political pundit I've heard who doesn't think that the presidency runs through Pennsylvania. And she had the opportunity to probably secure Pennsylvania for sure and make the map much, much harder. Without Pennsylvania, Trump has to win Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, and another state. So he has to win New Hampshire, Wisconsin, or Michigan. So, and that's if Ohio doesn't come into play. He could put Virginia into play probably, but that's probably an expensive endeavor. So you start going through all of these things, and from a strategic standpoint, from a numbers and an election standpoint, Shapiro made the most sense. So I think that what we can glean from a Walz nomination is that there truly is a civil war happening, much more behind the scenes than what is happening in the Republican Party. But there is a civil war in the Democratic Party as well that is, I think, more detrimental to their party than whatever it is we have going on in the Republican Party, because theirs is, they're still fighting, when you believe you have moral authority over somebody else, you're not able to make a logical argument to prove that you don't. And that's where, the Hamas supporters within the Democratic Party live. They believe that they have moral and religious authority over other people that they do not. And, when you believe you have that moral authority, you believe anything you do is justifiable. And that's where the Democratic Party finds itself.
I'm really so glad you said that, the whole Hamas wing of the party there. I think there's a strain of anti-Semitism that runs throughout the modern Democratic Party that they don't like talking about in polite company. And that's why Shapiro was passed over. And the pick of Walz was like, oh, yeah, he's average white guy. He's huggable and all that stuff. But once you scratch the surface of this guy, you're going to find a Chinese apologist. You're going to find a stolen valor guy. You're going to find a lot of weird stuff. And the puffing that went on with this guy, yeah, he was a high school football coach. Well, he was an assistant coach. Oh, yeah, well, he was a command sergeant. I'm an Air Force guy, so I don't know the Army ranks all that well. But, he was an E9 essentially, and he wasn't. He was for a brief period, and then he didn't live up to his obligation when he bailed on his unit to run for Congress when they were on their way to Iraq. So, these are the types of things I think that really need to be brought to the forefront. And I think Trump is really got to focus on this too. I mean,
I call him the Gomer governor. He's the Gomer pile. He tries to be all things to all people, happy-go-lucky. I mean, they would have you believe that, hey, he's coming by the house doing door-to-door. He's going to mow your lawn with a push mower while he's here. He's this, he's this. They've tried to make him into this non-dangerous person, and we have to remember that he oversaw his own cities burning to the ground.
I left that off. Excuse me,
and did nothing. He did nothing.
Had his honeymoon in communist China.
Yes.
So and he's
married on Tiananmen Square Day. I think he's a Chinese hack, personally.
I don't know what he is.
I mean, who lets your city burn down? Because Don and I we're 7 years out from Hurricane Michael. And we still are dealing with the destruction and the rebuild. And what this man allowed to happen in Minneapolis is disgusting. How did she pick him? I don't understand why. And just because Shapiro was Jewish, this guy is completely radical.
Do you think Kamala really is so out of touch that she really doesn't understand middle America? And she thought, well, this guy's a good pick because he looks the part, but he walks our walk. They're fellow travelers.
I think she understands it well enough to know that she's a woman of color, and there's a certain percentage of people who will vote for any woman of color for that reason. And so you could argue that, yeah, she's out of touch when it comes to issues, but she's certainly in touch when it comes to potentially winning the presidency by a sliver of people who are voting for her solely because of her gender and race.
Can I ask this specific? I'm going to ask something super specific, if you don't mind. I was listening to this interview with Elon and the Donald, and they talked about, shrinking the size of government and maybe putting a commission together to cut costs across the board. And one of the things that President Trump had suggested was eliminating the Department of Education, which we know at the state level isn't really of much value. However, it's the Department of Education. Do you think that's a smart political maneuver to say we're going to eliminate the Department of Education when people say, oh, well, he's against education? You think will be substantial blowback?
Sure, it's to be a target. The optics of it are horrible. The politics of it are bad. The implementation of it is probably exactly what needs to happen. But when you talk to people who aren't really, you talk to parents who have, kids in third grade, and they don't have time to watch the news. They're feeding their kids at night. They're doing homework. They're doing all the things that a parent does to raise their children during a weekday, during the school year. And they hear the headline, Donald Trump's going to cut the Department of Education. And they think, well, crap, I've had to spend $300 on crayons and pencils and, materials for my kid to go to public school. And they're like, why would he want to cut that? People aren't going to take the time to understand that the Department of Education doesn't provide any of that. And so it's, I think it's bad optics. You could, argue that it's, would be positive. If the Department of Education didn't exist, no one would probably notice. But talking about doing it is bad optics.
I agree.
Well, we only have a few minutes left, and I've got two things I need to chat with you about. And one is Pennsylvania coming out saying that they may not be able to count their votes on election night in time. And then I look how big our state is, and DeSantis, put out a tweet saying, come on, we do it. The whole world does it. So are you concerned with that, Jamie?
So every state has a little bit of a different process. The one thing that Florida does that Pennsylvania evidently does not trust their supervisor of elections to do is to tabulate their mail-in ballots prior to Election Day. And so, throughout Florida, we see at 7:01, the very first numbers we see are normally mail-in ballots, early voting, and then Election Day voting, right? And so that's why you see the numbers in Florida bounce around between 7 and 8:30 a little bit because, Democrats tend to do mail-in ballots a little bit more. Republicans tend to do early voting a tad more than mail. And then you have most Republicans are the majority of voters who vote on Election Day. So when you start adding those Election Day voters, it really starts to turn the race. Now, they do kind of the same thing over, the period of a day or two. And Pennsylvania, what I read was that they're not going to allow the tabulation of mail-in ballots to start until 7 a.m. of Election Day. So I would argue that if it should be done by 11 p.m., counting all your votes, that certainly by 7 p.m., 12 hours later, Pennsylvania should be able to count their mail-in ballots. Now, some states allow you to mail your mail-in ballot on Election Day, so the postmark is what they go by. In Florida, you have to have your ballot received by the supervisor of elections by 7 p.m. Election Day, but that's not true, and I'm not sure what the rule is in Pennsylvania.
So do we all need to get a PJ and fly up there to help them count that night? I mean, this is just, I'm so angry when I read this. I don't need Pennsylvania being, why we don't call the election.
Yeah, and if they're going to take a few days to do it, it very well could take a couple days to determine the election. But what we should be arguing is that, number one, we want free, fair, and transparent elections. And to do that, we should live stream everywhere ballots are stored, distributed, voted.
And I saw you
collected,
put that on X, and I love that.
And canvassed. So those 6 places we should be live streaming. And so to make sure we have free, fair, and transparent elections. And Pennsylvania, if they're going to take a couple days to do it, they damn sure should live stream everything.
Right. Okay. Well,
what was your second question?
Well, this is a tough one, and then we'll wrap. Senator Joe Gruters came out in support of legalizing marijuana, and I'm so upset by this because he's like, it'll create more jobs, it'll make sure it's safer, but I've seen what other states have done, and I actually, when he put it on one of his platforms, I messaged going, this is such a disappointment. Why do you think, because I know you know him well, and I need to have him back on, that he would support this? This is like upsetting to me. Because I feel like pot is a gateway drug.
I'll try to answer with what I know he's done publicly, not my private conversations.
No, publicly, because I know you know him.
But I do know that he has, he is someone who is always willing to, and I've known Joe since before he was married, before he had children, and I've seen the growth of a person being married and having children, and how he's always stood up for what he believes is right. But what he believes is right sometimes has changed over the years since he's had children, and and he is adamant that he would hate to have one of his children buy drugs off the street and die. And it scares him to death. It scares me to death. It scares,
but pot is not fentanyl, though. And I'm pro-medical because I'm a breast cancer survivor. So I'm pro, if somebody is in pain, they can get it.
Listen, I'm going to be a no on that amendment. Me personally, just because that's, I believe that if you want to get pot in this state, you can, and the issue is whether, and this constitutional amendment isn't going to make pot legal for children. So, my argument to Joe would be hey, you're not protecting your children for legal pot any more than with the amendment than without it. But, I know that that's kind of where he makes a lot. I won't say about this decision specifically.
Well, I'm dying to know. I'm dying to know because I just find it's changed a lot of states when they made. I try
very hard not to write other people's press releases unless I've talked with them about it. So, and Joe's one of those. But I do know that Joe stands up for what he believes in, and sometimes where he stands. Yeah, I do know that sometimes he surprises me. I'm a longer than 2-decade friend with him, and sometimes he still surprises me on where he decides to stand. I will have to ask
him, but I was not happy, and I did message him on it. What are we missing, Jamie? Well, we definitely have to have you back because and you are the numbers guy, and you seem to know a lot of this stuff. And
we're going to see a lot of changes. I think we'll see a lot of changes.
November.
The Democrat National Convention. It will be interesting to see who they decide to highlight and when in their convention. I think that will matter to people. If it's a parade of transgenders, then I think that may turn people off. If it's not, if they decide to do, moderate their convention and have military and have, military speakers and have, diverse speakers and all of those things and they start talking about tax cuts and safety and police and all the things that Kamala Harris has, had this epiphany over the last 4 or 5 days that she's now for, she's now for safe streets. She's now for, all these other tax cuts and for a secure border. If that's what she then decides to promote at the convention, I think a lot of us are being like, man, what a hypocrite. But, I think a lot of people don't really have an opinion of her, and they're just learning about her, and they certainly know nothing about Walz. And so, it'll be interesting to see what direction they decide to go if they go, with like, hey, we're going to try to play both sides of the fence with, the Palestinian wing of our party and the Jewish wing of our party.
Well,
are they going to turn their back on one of them? I don't know what they're going to do, but I think that those are the things that will interest me watching their convention.
Right. Well, I can't wait to have you back. And it's Jamie Miller on X. It's REP Jam. And also People Who Think.com. You have a wonderful Substack. It's been a pleasure having Jamie back on Veronica Live. I'll be calling you again, Jamie.
Yeah, good
Thank
talking
you,
with
Veronica.
you, Jamie.
Oh, it's
All
my
right.
pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.